There is a narrative about starting something new after 50 that feels so obvious it rarely gets questioned. It goes like this: earlier is better, younger is faster. The person who starts at 25 has a structural advantage over the person who starts at 52, and for certain things, that is true. A 25-year-old has more time for investment compounding. They have more runway for trial and error. They have more energy for the kind of exhausting experimentation that defines the early stages of most ventures. But here is what that narrative consistently misses. Building a trust-based income system using knowledge you have spent decades accumulating is not the same as building a venture from scratch. And when you account for what the person starting at 52 actually has, the comparison looks very different. Let us be specific about what starting at 25 actually involves. The 25-year-old has time. That is the advantage everyone acknowledges. But what else do they have? They have general enthusiasm and limited specific knowledge. They have a network that is still being built. They have credibility that has not yet been established. And they have a relatively undifferentiated perspective, one that has not been refined by decades of direct experience. When it comes to building content that generates trust and income, they are competing primarily on energy, trend awareness, speed, and volume. These are real advantages in certain content types: entertainment, gaming, fashion, lifestyle, but they are not the primary advantages in the type of content this channel covers: financial recovery strategies, professional income systems, retirement planning frameworks, career experience monetization. In these categories, the 52-year-old is not starting at a disadvantage. They are starting at a different and arguably stronger position. Here are the 5 structural advantages of starting later. The first advantage is a defined, credible niche. The 25-year-old has to figure out what they know that is valuable. The 52-year-old already knows: 25 years in healthcare administration, 20 years in operations management, 15 years in financial planning. That knowledge is not theoretical. It is tested, refined, and proven in real situations. The niche is not something to discover, it is something to recognize and articulate. The second advantage is a pre-existing professional network. The 20-5-year-old is building a network from zero. The 52-year-old has 1. Former colleagues, industry contacts, professional associations, people who have seen their work firsthand. That network is not automatically an audience, but it provides a starting point that eliminates months of audience building work. The third advantage is financial stability to invest in the right things. The 25-year-old is often balancing income building with basic financial stability. The 52-year-old typically has a stable primary income, which means AI income building is additive, not survival critical. That changes the risk profile entirely. You can be patient in the early months without the desperation that leads to poor decisions. The fourth advantage is a clear, motivating goal. The 25-year-old is building income with a vague sense of future benefit. The 52-year-old is building income with a specific retirement gap to close, a specific timeline, and a specific number. That clarity is motivating in a way that general ambition is not. When the goal is concrete, the work to achieve it is easier to sustain through the slow months. The fifth advantage is a filter for what matters. The 25-year-old is susceptible to every new trend, every new tool, every new approach that promises faster results. Because they do not yet know what does not work, the 52-year-old has watched enough trends come and go to know the difference between durable value and attractive noise. That filter, applied consistently, produces focused, efficient effort rather than scattered experimentation. Now let us be fair about the one area where a later start creates genuine difficulty: time horizon. The 25-year-old has 40 years for an income system to compound. The 52-year-old has 15. That is real. But it changes the strategy, not the viability. The income system being built here is not designed to replace a 40-year investment strategy. It is designed to address a specific gap, the retirement shortfall that exists for a large number of adults over 40, by adding a structured, growing income stream that reduces pressure on investment portfolios. For that specific goal, a 15-year horizon is more than sufficient. Here is the refrain worth holding onto. When you are 52 and starting to build AI income, you are not starting late. You are starting second. You watch what happened in the first round. You know what the mistakes look like. You know what the sustainable approaches look like. You know what your audience actually needs because you have been part of that audience for decades. You have something the early starters did not have. Information about the market, about the tools, about what works and what does not. That information advantage, applied with the 5 structural advantages above, does not make the journey easier, but it makes the direction clearer. And a clear direction pursued consistently produces results faster than a vague one pursued with more energy. The narrative that starting later means being disadvantaged is built on a narrow comparison. It compares time horizons and concludes that more time is always better. But income systems built on trust are knowledge businesses. And knowledge, specifically the kind that comes from decades of experience, is something that only gets more valuable with time. Not in spite of starting at 52. Because of it. If this reframed how you are thinking about your own starting point, the most useful next step is getting specific about what knowledge you are best positioned to turn into income. The AI Content System Starter Kit walks you through identifying your experience anchor and building content around it systematically. The link is in the description. And if you want to see what your retirement numbers look like with a structured income system added, the free AI Catch-Up Calculator gives you that picture. Also in the description. Here is something specific that the starting later advantage produces that rarely gets discussed in the context of AI income. When you build content and service income from a position of professional experience, you have access to a type of storytelling that younger creators simply cannot access. Not the motivational story of someone figuring things out as they go. The earned story of someone who has seen the problem play out many times and understands it from the inside in a way that only direct experience can produce. Your audience, adults who feel behind on retirement and are looking for structured, credible guidance, is not primarily drawn to the excitement of someone figuring it out in real time. They are drawn to the calm authority of someone who has seen this before and knows what actually works. That calm authority is something you have been building for decades. It is now deployable in a way that creates real trust and real income. Think about the content you consume when you are trying to solve a genuinely important problem. If you are dealing with a serious health issue, do you want to watch a 25-year-old figure out what they think might help? Or do you want to watch a physician with 30 years of practice explain what they know works? The answer is obvious. And it is obvious for the same reason that your audience prefers experience-based content when making significant financial decisions. Your content has access to that physician voicing your particular area of expertise, not because you have a formal credential, because you have the direct experience that produces the same kind of calm, grounded, specific authority that makes people lean in and take notes rather than passively consume and move on. That voice is not available to someone who started at 25. No matter how talented they are, no matter how hard they work. It is specifically the product of time and direct exposure. And that is something you have in abundance. Use it explicitly. When you explain a concept, ground it in what you have personally seen rather than what you have researched. When you give advice, say why it works based on what you have observed rather than what the theory suggests. When you tell a story, make sure it is a story that only someone who has been inside your specific professional context would know. That specificity is the signature of earned experience. And it is what your audience is actively looking for. And here is one final point about starting later that rarely gets acknowledged honestly. The adults who build AI income after 50 and do it well tend to build something more durable than younger creators who built faster. Because they built it on a foundation of real knowledge rather than trend chasing. Because they built it for an audience they genuinely understand rather than one they researched. Because they built it with the patience that comes from having a clear financial goal rather than the restlessness that comes from wanting to see fast results. Durable is more valuable than fast over a retirement timeline. A system that generates consistent income for 10 years is worth significantly more than one that generates impressive income for 18 months before the creator burns out or pivots to something else. The later start, with all its advantages, tends to produce the durable version. Not always. But the structural conditions that come with experience, a clear goal, a specific audience, genuine knowledge, realistic patience, create the conditions for durability in a way that speed and novelty cannot replicate. Start where you are, with what you know. for the audience that needs it, at the pace that your situation allows. That is not a consolation prize for starting later. That is actually the path most likely to produce the compounding income that changes a retirement timeline in a meaningful way.